What is up, guys? It's Bobgar here, and it's closing thought time for $10 modern white blue control. So we went 7-0, kind of. I kept playing more matches because I kept being like, not everybody's gonna leave against this deck. Some people are gonna stick it out and actually play out a full match with me, and 2 people did. We beat both of the matches where people stuck around and tried to play out with us. Those were against a white-blue Eldrazi deck running Training Grounds to kind of abuse that synergy with, I think, probably both Eldrazi Displacer and with the other card. What is it called? I don't know. It's the 1-drop Eldrazi that you tap for mana and draw a card. Of course, Training Ground makes that 2 mana, which is very nice. And so, yeah, we managed to beat that deck, and then we beat Enduring Ideal in a matchup of grindy decks that both can't do anything to one another. Pretty funny, and then everybody else just left after a game or two because I think they got mad after we countered all their good stuff, which feels bad, but what are you gonna do? Can't force people to stay around, so I don't know what this would have been. I feel a little bad that I didn't run it in a league. I might run it in a league still, especially given that we went 7-0 in the normal ones. Life has gotten a little expensive for me lately, and I didn't feel like running this one in a league because I didn't think it would do very well, but like I said, it did do well in the practice lobby, so it's possible it could do okay in a league. I might try that next week. Maybe I'll throw it together if I have a little bit of spare time. And let's talk about what did well in the deck and what didn't do well in the deck. So the underachievers, I'm going to start there. I mean, so when you go 7-0, none of the cards feel that bad. Aetherling just felt hard to get out and keep safe at the same time. You know, it's a little expensive, and it's probably the easiest of our win conditions to stop, both from removal and from effects like ensnaring bridge and things like that. I mean, yes, it can get around them, but it's very hard. So it definitely didn't feel like the best win condition we had. It felt probably like of the 3 win conditions we ran, it felt like the weakest. So I'm giving it an X for that, even though I don't think it was terrible. It just didn't win us any games. Didn't really ever get a chance to shine in any of the games that we did play. Jace Bellerin is a little bit the same. Sometimes it drew us 1 or 2 cards, but usually our opponent just killed it before it could do too much. And that wasn't a big deal. Sometimes it forced our opponent to kill it when he would normally want to kill other things. So it did slow our opponents down and draw us at least 1 card and replace itself. So it wasn't bad, but never really had a chance to shine or do anything great. Some ways it just feels like a overpriced Think Twice. So I don't, it's like, do you even want it in there? Or is it better just to run more Think Twices or counter spells or whatever? And the last one that gets an X is Cryptic Command. And this is a hard one because in the cases where it was good, it was really good. It is a dead card in a bunch of matchups, so running it as a 3-of does feel a little bad. One of the 2 matchups we managed to win, the Enduring Ideal matchup, it was the easiest card to sideboard out because, you know, basically it read gain 4 life, draw a card, and the 4 life isn't even relevant against Enduring Ideal, so it's basically just 4 mana, draw a card. Yeah, if they don't run creatures, it's terrible, especially in this deck where we don't run creatures, so we can't use its ability to get a 2 converted mana cost or less creature to play. So yeah, that one's the last one that gets an X. And let's talk about what went well. We got a lot of Approach of the Second Sun wins, especially in the matches that actually played out. That was the most common way for us to win. I think 3 out of the 4 games were won that way. I guess that's not quite. I think only 2 of the 4 were. One of them probably would have been won that way, but our opponent went for Enduring Ideal because I think they realized that they didn't have a chance unless they did, and we had the counter for it, and then they scooped. But if they hadn't scooped, I guess we would have won immediately the next turn by swinging in with creatures probably. And then Day of Judgment did what it was supposed to do. It was usually at least a 2 for 1, if not a 3 or 4 for 1, and that kept us in games long enough to stabilize. So that was great. You know, the deck really needs some wipe. 4 might be too many. I don't know. It felt right for this deck for us, but I could see going down to 3. I think most of the full-priced versions of this kind of deck do go down to 3. And the 2 Pull from Tomorrows were great. If we had trouble finding what we needed in the early game, we could play it at end of turn and draw 3 or 4 cards and discard something we didn't need anyway, which felt really good. And then later in the game, like, we kept having turns where we could approach and then pull the next turn to get our win conditions. There was one time I punted and I had that plan all laid out, and they pathed something and I let the approach get shuffled, which, by the way, is a huge punt. Sorry, it happens. But yeah, Pull from Tomorrow definitely pulled its own weight in the deck. Very good. Everything else was pretty good too. Nothing that I looked at and was like really bad. Censor was probably the closest, other than the ones that got an X, to getting an X, just because it didn't counter all that much. You usually just cycled it, but the fact that you can just cycle it for 1 makes it hard to give an X to. It's like, it's just in there. You just get, you know, if you need it, you need it. It's great. And if you don't need it, you get rid of it anyway. So All right, and then I want to talk a little bit about how one might upgrade this deck. All right, so looking at the upgrade path. This is a real deck. This is kind of one of those, sometimes I do these weird, unique decks, and it's like, oh, how do you upgrade it? I don't know. Let me make some stuff up. This one has an obvious upgrade path because this deck exists. People actually play this deck. Obviously, it's not 13 tickets or whatever ours cost online. It is usually 331 tickets and 17 cents. And in paper, it's about 532.20. This is just a list that happened to do well recently. I picked out. And there's a bunch of small differences from ours. I try to outline the biggest ones on the right side of the screen as little card images. Cryptic Command is better than Ojutai's Command most of the time, assuming you can make the blue mana work. And when you have a non-budget mana base, it's really not hard to make Cryptic Command work, especially when you're only 2 colors. Celestial Colonnade is much better than Fairy Conclave. It's just, it closes out games fast. It is a legitimate finisher. You can finish out games with Fairy Conclave, but it's not very realistic. But a 4/4 Flying Vigilance will close out games super fast. Supreme Verdict over Day of Judgment, they're pretty similar, but you know, it's nice to have the one that can't be countered, even though, I mean, if you're playing against a deck that could counter Supreme Verdict, you're probably also playing against a deck that doesn't care that much about the Wraths, because, I mean, usually decks that run a lot of counter spells are also usually decks that don't run a lot of creatures, but it's certainly possible that they sideboarded in a few counters to stop your sweepers and things like that, so Supreme Verdict definitely would get the nod over Day of Judgment, although I don't think it's a huge loss to go with Day of Judgment instead. Certainly when you're looking at making things budget, that's one of the easiest budget things to cut, just because it's basically the same effect, and it's easier on the mana, it loses the can't be countered clause. Wrath of God is also slightly better than Day of Judgment because it has the can't be regenerated, but again, that's very rarely actually relevant, so... and then it gets to run cool cards like Snapcaster for extra value that just lets you play any of your awesome cards from your graveyard when you flash it into play. So that is great, and we obviously don't get that one because that one's pretty expensive. And then a lot of the ones I saw recently started running Gideon of the Trials, which surprised me a little bit, but I think it makes a lot of sense. It both locks out your opponent and gives you a win con, so pretty cool to play that card. Yeah, and so that's the upgraded version of the deck if you're looking to spend that much money. If you're not, you could probably go somewhere in between, you know, upgrade slowly from what I have to what this is. Like I said, the Supreme Verdicts are a little pricey, and you could probably cut those. The Cryptic Commands are pricey. You probably could keep an Ojutai's Command at least for a little while. A lot of the Planeswalkers are a little bit expensive. Those are probably a little harder to cut. And the Celestial Colonnades are a little expensive. I mean, you can keep in Fairy Conclaves for a while, but again, not nearly as good. So yeah, I mean, you could get from one to the other incrementally by buying a card at a time, but it would take quite a while and obviously quite a lot of money over the course of that time. So I hope you had fun looking at the starter white-blue control deck I ran this week. I had an absolute ton of fun playing it. I felt a little bad for my opponents and how salty they got, but what are you going to do? You can't make everybody happy. You know, when you think you're going to lose and you feel like you're losing super slowly, I understand people scooping out and going, screw this, I'm not having fun. Oh yeah, I almost forgot to point out on the first page I have a little salt shaker in the corner. That's our mascot for this deck. Everybody hates being countered apparently. I will say I was super impressed by how many people just left games with us. Like, that's never happened to me before. 5 out of 7 games somebody just leaves after the first game or partway through the first game. Literally, that has never happened to me before with any deck I've ever played. People just hate this deck. I don't get it, but I feel like in tournament practice you shouldn't do that just because it's not very good practice for you, but I mean obviously it's up to them and it's their time, and I understand it is a slow deck that they might not want to deal with, but when they get into tournaments they're gonna have to deal with white blue control occasionally. It's still like top 10 in the meta for sure. So anyway, that's the deck for the week. I really enjoyed it. I hope you did too. Let me know what you think, if you have suggestions, if there were ways I could have built it better, things like that, and I will see you guys next time.
Hey guys, BobGar here. I just really wanted to quickly say, if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. If you enjoy my content in general and would like to see more of it, subscribe. I'll be coming out with more content in the future. And please leave me comments and let me know what I'm doing right, what I'm doing wrong, both in terms of production and in terms of my play and my deck building and all that. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I will see you guys next time.